All right, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Zoning Board of Adjustment for May 16th, 2024. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. Alrighty, and good evening, everybody, and welcome up to the main room of the town hall. And before we proceed, let's introduce ourselves, starting from my far left, please.
Gospel Bimba.
Michael Donlin.
Richard Tripp.
Crystal Morin, Secretary.
Lynn Perkins, Chair.
Craig Corbett, Vice Chair.
Jim Dietzel.
And
Bob Wentworth, Building Inspector.
thank you, Mr. Wentworth. And we also have our clerk, Jeannie Rio, is in the back. She'll be taking the minutes for the evening. And a few announcements before we proceed. In the event of an emergency, please exit to the rear of the room and don't use the elevator. Someone will assist you. And these proceedings are audio-video recorded and scheduled to terminate at 10 p.m. Please shut off all cell phones, iPhones, iPads, anything else that could create a distraction of the proceedings. And with that, we are ready to proceed. And that first case up would be Matthew Ritvo Cabezas and his wife Shannon. And that's case number 24117. Matthew, are you alone tonight?
Yes, I am.
Okay, good enough. It looks like you revised your application a little bit.
Correct.
Did you resubmit? Okay. I'm sure sitting in the audience, the last meeting probably gave you some cues there.
Yes.
All right, well, that's why we have you read in for the record the application that you are presenting to the board as it is written. And once we go through those 5 criteria, then we'll give you an opportunity to expand a little bit more outside of that strict criteria, okay?
Okay.
So the floor is yours.
MAC basis 29 Pond Road. So the variance will not be contrary to the public interest because the new garage will be used as a residential garage attached to the house. It will be adding property value to the area. The new garage is also being built on my property, which is set back from the main road. The spirit of the ordinance is observed because the granting of the variance would still promote health and safety welfare to the community because there will still be a large area between the new garage and the wetlands due to only building in a small portion in that wetland setback. Substantial justice is done because there will be no loss to the general public because the proper control measures will be taken to ensure that the wetlands are protected from the building, from building the addition, and there will still be a setback between the wetlands and the new garage. The values of surrounding properties are not diminished because the other properties will not be affected by this addition because it will add property value also that the wetlands will not be affected due to the high ground that the addition will be built on, and that the will still be a remaining setback area. And the proposed use is a reasonable one. I believe that it's reasonable to allow the variance because I can't build on the left side of my house due to the septic system, and I can't build to the rear of the house because we're not creating living space, as well as building to the front. The way my house is set up, you wouldn't be able to really build to the front of the house. And then lastly, the 75-foot setback and septic system limits where I can build. In addition, building on the setback is more practical because there will still be a setback area between the new garage and the wetland area.
Mr. Chair, one quick question before elaboration.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Cabazas, and apologies if I got that wrong, just reading through the 2, is it a safe assumption it's the same, you're applying for the same variance tonight, we just kind of cleaned up the criteria?
Yes, he did.
Is that the only change?
Yes, he did.
Sorry, thank you, just making sure that was the only change.
Not that the members know already, but Mr. Donlin will be sitting on this case, by the way.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Go ahead, Mr. Cabezas.
So as for that, so the reason I'm looking for the variance again is we've been living in the town since 2018. We bought this house brand new. We didn't have any kids at the time. Now we have 2 with one on the way in a couple months. And we love the house. We love the area. We're set back off the main road. We originally weren't planning this as our forever home. Just the way the market is and everything now, that's the plan to build. This setback, we found out when we started doing the planning for the addition. It wasn't known to us until after we saw the plot plan. So with that being said, we're looking to build in that setback area. The way my yard is kind of set up, it's not a traditional plot land. It's, if you look at it, it's kind of messed up. It has so many different, the outline is just not traditional, essentially. The wetland area, so if you look at the, I don't know if you have an aerial view, that's not even the front of the house. My house is behind that house there, so you really can't even see.
Is yours the White House?
No, that's my neighbor's house in
Oh,
in
so
front
the
of me.
yellow
So the
house
house
is
is
yours.
behind, even further behind.
I see, okay.
So there's a stream. If you're looking at the house straight on, down to the right, there is a stream, but it is in the wood line. So I have a clearing in the yard, then down about 20 feet as well, there's a 20 to 30-foot drop is where there's a stream. So even if we were to build, we still wouldn't affect that area. It'd kind of be impossible. I'd have to raise the land and bring in tons and tons of dirt to even hit that stream.
All right. You understand that this board doesn't look at building code issues. We just look at footprint. and area,
Correct.
Correct. And noting that you've given us some design criteria in the packet, I just want to differentiate that for you. You've submitted with your packet your septic plan, which I believe you're only utilizing as a reference here.
Correct.
But you would understand, of course, that if you were to include a bedroom for the intentions of an expanding family, the septic design is what determines how many bedrooms.
Correct, yes, and I've looked at again, the house was built back in 2018, so it's a new septic. I think, yeah, it was built 2018, so it has a new septic, and it's rated up to 5 bedrooms, and we only have 3.
It's rated to what?
5 bedrooms.
5,
And
okay.
we only have 3.
Okay. All right, well, I won't, we typically don't dispute septic plans, but noting that that's what you've submitted with your application, I just want to make sure there's some clarity there.
Correct.
That being set aside, let's get into your footprint. Your proposal is what, a breezeway, 8 foot, and then a 30 by 30 foot garage?
No, the garage was,
I'm sorry, it looks like you're 30 feet from the corner of your house. So that 8 foot breezeway plus the,
correct, yes, yes,
so 30 foot garage is pretty large.
yes.
24 by 24 is usually a good sized 2-car garage. The point to this is that you're asking for relief, but you're overbuilding a structure that perhaps isn't quite necessary for your needs, and you're asking for relief to that. That's where I'm going with the question. And so that's pushing your building footprint into the wet area buffer that you're asking for relief on.
Okay.
So why don't you explain the details to the footprint for us and why you're designing this to the size it is?
So, the reason we're making it the size it is future we're looking at too, as well, to potentially build on top if later on down the road, possibly. We both have large SUVs, and we want adequate storage as well for the kids' toys and things like that.
Okay. Anybody else on the board?
I have a question. Since the variance you're asking for is relief from the wetland setback, I don't see where the wetland is shown on your drawing. I see the That's the line?
Yeah, that radius that says 75-foot wetland setback, that radius line is that area.
Oh,
And a majority of that area is all wooded area.
say
It's not-
again?
That majority of that area is all wooded. It's all woods. It's pretty much a tree line, and then it goes into the stream probably another 20 to 30 feet, about 20, 30 feet downhill.
Thank you.
Is the building that was to be raised, is that gone now? That's on this plan?
The old building, yes. So originally there was a house there originally, and then they tore it down, and then they built the current house in the current position that's listed. So
Okay.
there was a house closer to in that setback essentially at one point for many years.
Interesting. Any reason why the garage can't slide forward more so that it's more flush with the front of the house? I have no problem with the angle position, because I can see the way the driveway comes into this is kind of an issue.
We kind of picked that design just because we didn't want it to look like it was just like a long trailer. Essentially, we kind of like that shape, that look to it, where it's kind of like a V, like a very wide V, essentially.
Yep. Understanding that continues again to put you more encroaching into that setback area.
The other reason too is we have a patio directly behind the house, so it would run if we were to go essentially flush straight across, it would run into our patio that we have in the back as well.
Okay, your patio is hardscape or wood or,
Hardscape.
all right? I'll yield
Just
from,
put that in last summer.
got it, okay. Let me yield and see if anybody else has any questions. Mr. Corbett?
You kind of touched on mine. I had a question about the existing building that was being raised and its proximity to the wetlands, but we got the answer that it was within that setback radius. That's it for my questions for just now. I may have some after.
All right, very good. Mr. Dietzel?
No, thank you.
Mrs. Moran? And Mr. Obimba?
Mr. Chair, you mentioned if we make it a 24 by 24, which is usually the standard for a garage, will that prohibit you from later on expanding the top to store toys?
No, we were kind of thinking more of just like if we built on top of it for rooms and things like that to have adequate living space in the future, if we decided to do that.
Yeah, because usually I've seen the board is if you are within the standard, it's much more, not an excessive request. Once you go, 6-7 feet past, this is 30 foot by 30, so that's an extra 6 extra feet. It starts to sound like you're encroaching into that, wetland area. So I just want to see if a 24 by 24 will still not meet your needs in future.
I mean, it possibly could. I mean, we really haven't thought about it. We kind of just went with that size, only because of where that stream is, and we really wouldn't touch it. It's in a wooded area, so it's inside that tree line, and it goes down another 20 to 30 feet. So it is way low. It's about 20 to 30 feet lower than the level of our house. So it's down quite a ways.
All said, Mr. Chair.
Okay, Mr. Donlin?
Yeah, so I'm a little confused because some of the drawings don't match up. I was curious about the angle as well, but that already was touched on. So is the first floor, do you have, on the front of the house now, is there like a two-car garage or something that exists that's on the first floor level? It's like
Yeah,
not,
so there was a two-car garage there. We currently transformed that into a larger living space.
okay, that's already has happened?
That's in the process of happening now, correct?
Okay, and then the new garage that's being proposed is strictly just a garage? There's no second floor or anything?
Correct.
Thank you.
Yep. Uh, Well, it is a 25-foot wide in the front, but if you look at how this is at an angle to the house, and then there's the breezeway, and the back side of the garage is 30 feet, and it's 30 foot deep, but there's that bevel that clips off the front corner there.
Yeah, and some of them, the ones with the garage doors, it shows 25 by 30, and then the next drawing with the foundation plan is 30 by 30, so there's some contradictory stuff.
Yeah, and despite the fact that the proposed structure is 30 foot wide, the clip in the front leaves the front at 24, and that kind of points out Mr. Donlan's point there, that if you're putting in two garage doors, that 24 foot is usually a minimum. Those 8-foot doors fit. So you're 25 foot wide at the opening where the garage doors are. So I understand that.
Let me just,
I think one of the things that I see, and I understand the writing of the applicant, Mr. Cavasis, but you're asking for an extreme size, and this property more or less was brought into a conforming nature prior to this old building being raised. I imagine this property was cleaned up in 2018.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct.
And then they made it conforming with the footprint and the septic plan. But now what you're doing is reverting back in the reverse direction with something that's pretty large. Anyway. Okay, anything else you'd like to share with us?
No.
Okay, any other questions from the board?
No.
Okay, and
On your left chair?
yes, sir, Mr. Tripp?
So the wetland, is it just annual wetland, or did you say it's a creek?
It's a stream.
It's a stream?
Yes, it's just a stream. It's, I don't really, that's really all I can kind of describe. It's a stream. It dries up in the summertime for the most part, and then spring time it's usually flowing pretty good from the snow melting. Other than that,
So it's, I'm confused. Is it wetland or is it a stream?
Yeah, so the infraction here that the relief is being sought is that the structure is going to be less than 75 feet from a wetland greater than 1 acre.
Yeah.
And it's not considered a prime wetland, and it's, I think, 16520A is not a prime wetland designation, but it is following the wetland setback criteria nonetheless. I believe with a prime wetland, the setback is 150 with a buffer of 75. Am I correct?
Correct.
Go ahead, Mr. Wentworth. Okay. And you can, if you, we'll go to staff right now, as a matter of fact, Mr. Wentworth, if you have anything you'd like to add off of staff or anything. I realize you're sitting in this evening for Mr. Mackey.
Yeah, no, it's just the applicant's requesting a variance to the terms of Article 3, Section 16520A of the Town of Derry zoning ordinances to allow construction of a 25 by 30 foot attached garage with a mudroom.
Very good. Thank you. Does that clear that up for you, Mr. Tripp?
Somewhat,
Okay. Any other questions then?
yeah. So the situation is such that, well, it is within the 75-foot setback. It's at a dramatically higher elevation than the wetland.
It is. Would you like to articulate that a little bit more? I picked that up in your application, the
Okay.
grading off of this, and I didn't quite understand it. So
Okay.
go ahead.
so the yard itself is leveled. Where we want to build, it's flat, it's open land, and then you hit a tree line. At that tree line, it's a drop for about 20 20, 25, 30 feet somewhere, if I to guess. I haven't measured it out exactly, but to eyeball it, it's about 25, 30 feet. And it's a decline, probably another 20 to 30 feet. So if we were to draw a straight line across and it was all leveled and we walked to the end of the tree line, I mean, you're looking down at a 30-foot drop if there wasn't a decline. But there is. So it is significantly lower than the house, than the land above it. It's a drop from the wood line.
So is there a berm or elevation between this structure and the grade that's going downhill?
Say that again?
A berm or a rise in the grade before it starts to go downhill?
No, it's just it's the grade and then it's the decline down.
And, you know, to note, Mr. Tripp, that the structure primarily is, I would say, is easily 75% of this structure is in the wetland setback, which brings to the question of if you need a 24 or 25 by 25 foot garage works, and you're going to such a larger extent, because it's pushing you so much more into that wetland setback area, where it could be modified a little bit or softened by a smaller structure and also something that's pulled forward a little bit. Not to make light of Mr. Cabasis's patio, but construction sometimes creates destruction before it can be finished.
So you would say that the area from where you want to build the garage is fairly flat for 50 feet?
Correct.
So you could believe that any runoff due to the building would be minimal?
Absolutely, yes. The way that they kind of designed how the drainage and things like that, we were going to have drainage set as much as possible away from that area.
So I guess, do you expect to have eaves, not eaves, but downspouts and stuff, and they would be flowing into where?
The front more so to the front of the house,
Yeah,
which would be obviously away from that wetland area, because we're my property's the whole thing is raised, so like even going down the driveway, it's about a 7,500 foot driveway. I'm sorry, 7,500 yard driveway. It's pretty far off the main road. I mean, it's raised from that main road, so it's gonna go down into the driveway as it does now when it rains or snow melts and things like that.
I'm done for now.
Okay, very good. Nobody else has anything, we'll make a call to public. Seeing no gestures there, we'll make a call to public. We have some phone numbers posted on the screen for anyone who is remote that wishes to participate and have their thoughts heard on this application. And so likewise, the call right now is to anybody who wishes to speak in favor of this application. This would be your opportunity to come forward, and that applies to those remotely. Mr. Corbett, you want to read off those phone numbers?
Yep. Number to dial is 646-558-8656, and your meeting ID is 323-909-140, and once in, you'll press star 9 to raise your hand. Anybody at home having any technical issues, you'll dial 603-845-5585, and someone will be happy to help you.
Good, and star 9 gets them noticed, am I correct?
Correct, raise your hand.
Yeah, and anybody out there, Ms. Preventure?
Seeing no one rise, Mr. Chair, online.
Very good. So I don't see anybody coming forward here at this point. So now anybody opposed to this application, this would be your opportunity to come forward and have your thoughts heard as well. And that applies to those of you who are remote as well. Seeing no gestures or anybody rise, anybody there for that call, Mr. Preventure?
Seeing none, Mr. Chair.
All right, then we'll consider that we've met statutes for hearing public input on this matter and brings us back to the board. Any last thoughts, Mr. Cabezas?
No, I mean, we're just hoping it gets approved. Again, this was not our end-all, be-all house. And then as time went on, we realized we really liked the property. We're set back into, obviously, there's conservation land all behind us and everything, and we love that, being off the main road, being kind of like secluded back there. And, you know, we don't want to give up the property, but we are looking to expand a little bit, just because of the need of the family. So, thank you.
All right, let me just do some thinking here before we dart off to the next phase of this.
Mr. Preventure, can we have the overhead view, please?
That right up.
Now, which building is yours?
It's the farthest back to the right, correct, right there.
Right in there? And your driveway is?
And that, so if you bring that cursor down, if you can see that small opening, yep, so if you follow that, that's actually the stream. If you follow that down, that right in there is where that stream is.
And did you describe that as a seasonal runoff?
Correct, yes, it is.
So it's not wet all year round?
Correct. It definitely dries up during the summertime.
So it's peeper heaven now?
Say that again?
Peeper heaven?
Yes, correct.
And your driveway is where?
So if you go to the front of the house, you can follow it to the right, and it's actually, we share the driveway. So if you go, yep, keep going all the way down, and that would be the driveway to the main road.
Okay. You all set, Mr. Tripp?
I am.
Anybody have any last inquiries before we head to deliberation? Mr. Donlin, you all set?
Yeah, I mean, I'm still a little confused on the disparity between the different numbers on the garage. And again, that it's the nature of the building that's made up of a non-traditional building structure, meaning there isn't 4 right angles. It's like, so what side is the 25 feet? Is it the longest side on the side that's of a different dimension than the other one?
The 25-foot would be in the front, and it's the length would be 25, and then it would be 30 feet deep.
Yeah, the 30-foot goes from the corner of the existing structure to the opposite corner of the garage, but the front of the garage is only going to be 25 feet across.
Correct.
So is it a 5 or an 8-foot breezeway?
Copy.
Yeah, it's a 5 by 8, so it's going to be going 8 feet back.
So is there any reason why and let me just share with you where I think my mind's going with this, and it may be where other members of the deciding board members are going, which is, again, going back to what I opened with, is this is an oversized garage, and the breezeway, the oversized garage, just keeps pushing you more into the wetland setback. Do you think you have any room that you wish to amend, or if you thought this board was going to shoot this down?
I could, yes, absolutely. I could modify it, absolutely. I mean, the goal is to get the garage built.
Okay. Could you see eliminating the breezeway and attaching the garage directly to the house?
Yes or no, only I wouldn't be at, the breezeway, we would have to have the breezeway just because we wouldn't be able to line the house up straight because of that patio and bar set up in the back, because it's a patio with like, it's a stone patio with like a fire pit and things like that. And it would run, if we were to do it long ways and eliminate that angle from the breezeway, we would be running pretty much right, almost not through the center, but a good chunk of that patio.
Mr. Donlin, any thoughts there?
Yeah, so I agree that it would seem a lot more logical to move this to be squared to the house and is forward. I mean, even you could argue in front of the house by a couple feet wouldn't be out of keeping with the normal architecture, which would alleviate some of that burden. And, you know, I get the large SUVs. I will admit I have a 24-foot garage, and I'm not overburdened with depth at 24. I think 30 is slightly on the excessive side. But I am curious about your patio thing on the rear. Does that projects farther to the right of the house on the rear than the
Correct.
corner?
Yes, that was a part of why we thought of the breezeway idea, because that way it would kind of separate the back of the garage to the patio.
So how much to the right of the house, if you were facing the house from the front, how much from the right of the house does the patio project?
I would say about 4 to 5 feet, and that's why we did that 5-foot length for the
Right, so even if the,
right.
so if the patio projects off the side of the house less than the requested breezeway, your garage could be 180 feet deep and it wouldn't affect that patio, right? It would just run parallel to it?
correct.
We have some suggested modifications, Mr. Donlin, that would be beneficial to the applicant, that would suit the board.
Yeah, I would say take a couple feet out of the depth and move it up closer to the front of the house, and then you're moving that much more area out of the wetland setback, and it wouldn't seem as, a bridge as far.
So instead of doing the 30 feet deep, do 25 feet.
Pick a number, but
Okay.
but yeah, and then shift it closer to the front of the house, and then you're
What do
you're
what do you
pulling
mean
more out.
shift it to the front of the house, so don't have the angle? Are you saying?
You can have the angle if you want. I mean, that's your burden to build something like this, but so right now it's, as drawn, you have it set back like 4 or 5 feet, 8 feet or whatever from the front of the house before the front of the garage starts. Whereas if you just shifted that thing forward so that like the two corners would meet if you projected a line to them, if you get what I'm saying.
I really don't.
Yes, I think more or less, are you contending to he can keep the bevel in your idea, Mr. Donlin?
I mean, if he wants to build that, you know,
Yeah, but
whatever.
But it's not about the bevel as much as it is trying to pull this structure.
Exactly, get more area out of the thing, the
It'd be
wetland.
nicer to see 50% of the building out of that setback instead of 3/4 of it in the setback. You follow me?
Yes.
And I think you
As
can.
much as reasonable.
Yeah, and I think that by shortening the depth, there's 5 feet. By moving it forward 5 feet, now there's 10 feet, and I think that gets.
So
you
you're
to-
saying we move the garage, so the breezeway and the garage, we would move it forward?
Correct, and shorten the depth.
So the only issue with that is we have a side garage door that would go into the old garage. That's why we were connecting it at that point.
There's a side door into the existing structure.
Correct.
Yeah, but you're gonna add that breezeway.
Correct.
But you could leave the breezeway, still slide this garage forward, shorten the depth 5 feet.
Okay, now I understand what you're saying now, yes. Yeah, I wouldn't be opposed to doing that at all.
All right, so we're gonna as we get into deliberation, and we kind of have to think ahead here, because once we go into deliberation, we're not gonna come back to you, okay? And I want to try and find a resolve so you can move along and do your business, but.
Appreciate it.
So we're gonna go with a 25 by 25 foot garage. Mr. Wentworth, before we do that, you know, it's noted that this is a 25 by 30, and as the board's discussion is going, the actual depth of the garage is almost proposed at a 30 by 30 foot, but the 25 foot at the front gets clipped down. I realize you didn't intervene on the structure of this. I forgot what I was going to ask you. That's it, yeah. What Mrs. Moran just said, yes, yeah. Do you need us to alter this at all? Tell you what, we could go with a not to exceed on it, and that way it encompasses the whole envelope. Would that work for you? Yeah. Mr. Corbett, make sense to you?
I'm not going to oppose what you guys are doing. I'm getting a popsicle headache, to be completely honest.
You're what?
Getting a popsicle headache, to be completely honest. I have no idea. I think we've. Oh, I get it. I get what we're trying to do. I just think I think we're completely redesigning a proposal.
Well, this gentleman's asking for relief, and his relief that he's asking for puts a new building 75% into a wetland area.
I understand. I also see, to me, I don't think that we're that close. I think it's, to look at it, even to shave 5 feet, I don't see it being that big of a difference. You look at this property, you look at the setback radius in general, the house is right on top of 75 feet. Regardless, we still need a variance. To me, 4 feet, when we're 60 feet out, is minuscule.
Well, it's 5 and 5. That's a total of 10 feet.
Understood. Still
Okay.
with 75 feet, though. If we were closer to that line, you know, already within it, I think. Honestly, I don't have a problem with it as it is. If you guys want to change it, I'm not opposed. I don't agree with the approach that we're taking.
And you would care to approach it how?
Not as strong-armed. I don't think we need to get into it. I don't like how we're headed tonight. I think we have a lot of attitude. I just don't like how it is.
I'm sorry, again?
Yeah, I don't want to speak. I've tried to get off a few times. I disagree with how it's going.
Okay, good enough. Mr. Tripp, any thoughts there?
It appears that the biggest issue I would have would be the runoff from the garage roof. You know, and it appears the roof is such that it would go either to the left or the right, not to the rear. You know, so you are, what would you say, maybe 60 feet? You'd be intruding into the wetland by 15 feet or so with the current building, with the current proposal. So if the issue is, you know, runoff from the buildings getting into the wetland, then I would propose that we recommend some way of capturing the wastewater, you know, so that what does go into the wasteland, it reduces the amount of water going into the wetland.
Right. And what are you thinking as far as containment there goes? You have any ideas?
Well, I know that in other proposals, they had put in, you know, downspouts, and they went to some sort of capture where the water would go into, and it would you know, then it would slowly drain into the dirt, you know, and instead of just running off somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's like I said, that would be my concern.
Okay.
If the water just runs into the wetland.
All right. Mr. Wentworth, we've had an application before where we had a similar runoff for a proposed garage expansion. Do you recall what the method was that we used to control that runoff?
That, If it's the one I believe you're talking about, that went through shoreland.
I'm sorry again?
That went through the state shoreland.
No, this was one that, it was close to the property line. A neighbor was, and I know you sat on this with us probably a year ago, and Mr. Tripp had the same concerns. He wanted to create a catch basin or something out of rock. It wasn't pertaining to the shoreline protection, but it was just controlling runoff overall.
Yeah, I mean, you can put in rain gardens or some things like that,
Did you say rain garden?
some sort of rain garden.
Okay.
So in the back of the house, in the back, coming from the conservation land, there is a slight slope, so there's runoff into that area, especially in the springtime with the snow melt. Significant, where my yard kind of gets flooded. It takes a while to dry up. So if we were to go forward, I could put the drains so that they run off to the front, essentially how the drains are on the front of the house, which they wouldn't reach the back to create any more water that's going from the backyard down the hill into the stream.
I have another question. So you said you put a deck on the back of the house. Now, is that a raised deck, or is that
No,
like,
it's a patio.
it's a patio?
It's a stone patio.
So you've already increased the amount of impervious surface at your house, but that's outside of the wetland setback.
Correct.
All right, yeah, but,
Because the setback runs right against my house. I think it's a foot off of the house.
yeah. But but the house does not set in the setback, unlike the garage that you're proposing to build.
Say that again?
Your house is not in the 75-foot setback.
Not that I know of, no.
Not-
Per the plot plan,
That's a good answer.
per the plot plan, it shouldn't be.
Yeah.
I mean,
But unlike the garage that you're proposing to build, which sits primarily in the setback, you know, and like I said, my concern is that you're going to have whatever 30 by 25 is, a square foot of water runoff, you know, during a storm or whatever, and that has to go someplace. So, you know, I would rather that it goes away from the wetland rather than into the wetland.
right, that's how we have it set up now with the current house. It runs to the front of the house, down to the hill,
Yeah,
to the front, to the roadway.
so,
Mr. Wentworth, the rain garden term, can you describe that at all, or you're not, is it just something you see on a planning board plan?
It's basically something that would collect, store water so it can, I guess, infiltrate into the ground.
Yep.
yeah,
It's a sunken area, crushed
Correct.
stone allows water to flow into it and then overflow and then seep out through the ground, correct?
yeah.
Mr. Cabezas, what do you think of that rain garden idea?
Yeah, that's fine.
Is it something you could pull off?
Yeah, I mean, my well is in that setback, right in that area.
Yes, it
Which-
is, isn't it?
Yes, it is. Because it was the original well from the original structure of that house.
And that is drilled, an artesian well, not
Correct.
dug? Yep. Okay. So we have
As far
some,
as I know, this isn't my forte at all. As far as I know, it's a regular
well, a
well.
dug well is this big around, an artesian well is a steel
Oh,
casing.
yeah,
comes
so
up
that's
out
what
of
it would be,
Okay,
yes.
good enough. All right, so we have the, kind of the ideas of the, changing the envelope size of the building structure. We have the rain garden idea with Mr. Tripp. Mrs. Moran, anything from you?
I think it covered both of the
We've beaten it to death, all right. Mr. Corbett, before we go into deliberation, do you have anything that you'd like to add?
Nope.
Okay, good enough. If all concerns from the board are addressed, let's make a motion, go into deliberation.
So moved.
Very good. Mr. Tripp has the motion for deliberation. Could I have a second?
Second.
Mr. Donlin seconds. All in favor of deliberation, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none. All right, well, let's open up a dialogue with the board now. Mr. Corbett, you have a strong feel here. Why don't you go ahead?
No, I think the attitude of the board was rude, and I don't like hearing, I don't
Is,
care how you.
I'm
Yeah,
sorry, what is what again?
Rude. I don't like hearing, I don't care how you do it, figure it out. That's not a solution. If we're gonna propose solutions, propose one. Don't propose, I don't like this, I don't care what you do, figure it out. I don't like that we're going there. I don't like that we're immediately shaving off feet without really having a discussion with the entire board to see what the other three members think prior to a vote. So the way I look at it, we already have a well that's within the setback radius. You know, my questions would be more so, why do I have documents that say 25 by 30 and 30 by 30? It would be nice to get these kind of ironed out before they come to us so we know what we're looking at. But overall, the 30 by 30 doesn't bother me. You know, looking at it, they have no space to play with here, looking at the size of the property, of the way of the land. I understand that it's coming in, but even shaving off a few feet, if it was a 25 by 30, we're going to a 24 by 24, as we said, so 1 by 6 make that big of a difference? To me, it does not. A 5 by 5, I understand it's 10 feet, we're still way in there. Again, we still have a well even further in there. It doesn't seem as gross of an ask as I think we reacted to, so just my
Okay.
take on it.
Mr. Donlin?
Yeah, so the rainwater on the roof is of little concern to me, as the rain rains on the ground now, so that doesn't really change much. I get the velocity will go up and the location of volume may increase slightly at like where the gutter line would be, but in reality, the water's hitting there and running down the hill already. So that's not of major concern to me personally. I was kind of thinking about the shifting forward based on, if I'm understanding the applicant's testimony, I'm kind of envisioning that it's like 2 garage doors with the entrance door in the center. So with it being offset back a little to make it so that you're kind of walking into the garage, or what was the garage, in the front of what is the new garage. I kind of get that now after he had said that. So something to consider there, although I do think that if the door was just back in the garage a few more feet, it wouldn't be a huge encumbrance. And to Mr. Corbett's point earlier, when I, in what was not intended to be a brash way of saying that I didn't care about how he built the building, meaning I don't care if it's a perfect rectangle or not. One way or the other, the point of that conversation was to try to minimize the amount of volume within the setback area, not the shape of the building per se.
Yeah, I concur with you on that. I didn't take that as being rude. However, I do find that the idea to deliberation and trying to appease an applicant and work fairly within the community is to iron out any ideas when you can see that there's going to be resistance among a group of 5, and try to iron out those ideas before you go into deliberation so you can work through them. We've got all the ideas on the table, and now we come back to Mr. Tripp. Any ideas there, Mr. Tripp?
Well, I'm like Mr. Corbett. If we can control the runoff, then it won't, the size of the building or the garage becomes a less of an issue. So, like I said, if we can, and I understand Mr. Donlin's, that he doesn't think that the runoff's going to be that big an issue. But the problem you have right now is any rain that falls hits the ground and soaks in. After you build the garage, any rain that falls runs off someplace, which means that it has to go someplace. And
What if the ground was frozen?
if the ground was frozen, it probably wouldn't be raining.
Well, you can still have frost in the ground in April and it rain.
Yeah, that's true, but,
I think one of the things that occurs to me about the runoff is the fact that there is a seasonal runoff area there that Mother Nature created. And it seems, thank you to Mr. Preventures showing us the aerial on this, it seems that this runoff stream probably does its own method of filtering out water that's going to go down to any wetlands or travel down through. And so I kind of saw that in that light. So I don't want to see an erosion issue rolling off a roof where you just end up getting erosion from just constant pounding running off a roof, and then creating excess silt where there isn't any going into this area. But I have no problem with controlling that runoff, say as a gutter and some kind of containment, and then allowing that filtered water to catch that runoff stream. So I'm kind of in that middle ground between Mr. Tripp's points and considerations that I had about the amount of percentage that the build was into the wetland radius. So I think if, in regards to, and Mr. Wentworth helped us out with the rain garden terminology, I think if we have some way of controlling so it's not just a downspout catching so many volumes of water during heavy rains, washing down all this dirt into this seasonal runoff stream, I think if we have a way to contain that, I get more comfortable with this. But I do feel like the structure is larger. I don't want to say larger than it needs to be, because that's up to the eye of the beholder. I wouldn't care if it's a 100 by 100-foot garage. However, when you're asking for relief and you're building something that's excessive in the basis of just having a functional two-car garage and storage area above, and you're asking for some relief, that's where you start to get the rub. Especially because the going into this is as large as it is. Let me feed back to anything from you, Mrs. Moran, on this?
No, my only concern is, do you want us to say 25 or 30 in the motion, just to?
Well, we're
Mr.
not
Chair,
there yet.
if we could ensure proximity and microphone is on, thank you.
We are trying to get a consensus still before we move to a vote.
But I think to Ms. Moran's point, it was kind of to one of my events that got ignored. It's coming in as a 25 by 30, but then every other document's a 30 by 30.
And I think he may have, the 25 and the 5 was his 30, but I haven't built anything in my whole life, so I don't want to assume.
So I guess, Mr. Corbett, back to you. You know, we see this conflict that the footprint of this is actually 30 by 30, even though the front of the garage is only 30 by 30. But understanding that the write-up of this shows new construction width of 30 by 30. It's not just the garage. So do you want to modify the language on this? Or what do you want to do here?
I don't understand what you're saying. So it's saying it's a 25 by 30 garage with a 5 by 8 mudroom, but then our design is a 30 by 30 garage with a 5 by 8 breezeway. My complaint is, why do I have two different things?
Terminologies?
Yeah, I should know what I'm looking at. Am I looking at a 30 by 30 or am I looking at the 25 by 30? That's what I'm mad about.
Okay. Any interpretation? I realize you didn't write this up, Mr. Wentworth. Any feel there, or you want to just stay out of that?
Interpretation.
Mr. Corbett's point. I mean, from the code inspection, from the building inspector, code enforcement side, we're essentially adding on an area of volume. And you can call it 25 by 30 if you measure the front of the building versus the back and the two sides, or you can look at the total construction area. Is any of this an issue or regarding code enforcement? Because what we do, you enforce.
That's exactly it. Whatever your decision is what we will enforce.
So essentially, we have we can modify this as we need to be to accommodate Mr. Corbett's concerns and still let it carry on.
Decision needs to be made, what's the size?
Got it, okay. Anything off of that, Mr. Corbett?
So
Not right
should
now.
we
I
make it a
just- yeah, I just don't
35-foot
understand how it
width by,
happens.
25 width by 30 depth building?
But does that mean the back has to be 25 as well? Do you take the
Yeah.
bigger of the two numbers?
Generally, it's a even-sided building. You know, the front and the back are the same,
Yeah.
the two sides are the same. But it doesn't have to be.
Okay, well, I'm gonna go with the volume, or, you know, on the idea that you add the breezeway, that makes it a 30 by 30-foot area. Are you all right with that, Mr. Corbett?
No, because it would be a 30 by 38 according to Bob's staff report.
Okay, so, Mr. Corbett, you make a motion what you'd like to do. Do you want to send this back to code enforcement, have it rewritten, and then we table this, or what do you want to do?
Yeah, I'll defer, I don't know why it's all getting put on me, so,
Well,
like, Lynn, you're also the chairman. What do you think it is? It says 25 by 30 on what we're ruling.
I'm
Looking at a
not,
30
I'm
by
not
30.
going to worry about the semantics of what is written here. I am looking at trying to hear this case, and this board has the power to modify this to make it what it has to be written. So if that's what you want to do, if that's what we're splitting hairs about, that's what we'll do. Is that what you want to do?
I couldn't care less, to be honest.
Okay, well, let's go back to the request for the relief. Mr. Tripp, where are you at on this right now?
I am, I have no, I believe that the dimensions as requested, 25 by 30, are acceptable,
Okay,
as long as, like I said, as long as there's some way of managing the wastewater runoff.
okay. Mr. Corbett, can you, Mr. Donlin, can you narrow down where your concerns are right now?
Yeah, yeah, I mean, as far as structuring the motion is concerned, the unnatural nature of the building is certainly throws a wrench in that, but my whole concern, if at all, was to just try to minimize the amount of area within the setback to something that's reasonable, because the request, in my opinion, the depth of the garage is excessive, and it's only just furthering the relief.
Okay. So, and you'd like to modify the location and perhaps the size of that footprint?
Certainly the size of the footprint.
Okay. So, seeing as how we have so many crossroads here to iron out, I'm going to recommend that the board table this with directions to the applicant, and he can come back with those corrections, and if we have to communicate through code enforcement during the next week or so to clear up any of the issues, that's what we'll do.
Sounds good.
All right, somebody want to make that motion?
So moved.
Second.
All right, Mr. Tripp makes a motion to table this with directions, seconded by Mr. Donlin. What are the directions that we would like to have? I think that we want to see a water containment runoff of this, off the garage, Mr. Cabezas. And why don't you take the temperament of the board's dialogue that's gone on and look at modifying this footprint a little bit and get yourself out of that wet setback area a little bit more.
I mean, how much more are we looking at? Because, I mean, the side of the house is 75 feet from the side of the house. It's in the setback.
I understand. You've heard the questions that have been provided to you to reduce that impact. I think we're not prepared to give you that permission just based off of the runoff, and I think we need to have a better idea of what the runoff design will be, not just the term rain garden. And perhaps a more reasonable footprint would be more advantageous to yourself and this board.
Okay.
We can, we'll follow up with code enforcement, I will, through either tomorrow or Monday, and we'll get you better direction from
So
that
would I have to
point.
come back here and present it?
Yes, and we'll
Again,
put
okay.
you first on the agenda for the next meeting.
Okay.
All righty? All right. Pardon me, because did we officially come out of deliberation?
No.
No.
Okay, all right.
I'll make a motion.
So I broke that protocol. I apologize to the board. Thank you, Mrs. Moran. Please proceed with that.
I'll make a motion to come out of deliberation.
Very good. Can I have a second, Mr. Corbett?
Second.
Very good. Seconded by Mr. Corbett. All in favor of coming out of deliberation, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Mr. Cabezas, you have your directions for that, and we'll communicate through code enforcement with you in the next business day or so forth after, okay?
Okay.
Very good. Sorry for your wait. Have a good evening.
I'm gonna set this one out.
What's that?
I'm gonna set this one out.
All right.
Next meeting. You could pick up on what was going on.
Mr. Donlin and Mr. Dietzel, you both sit on this next case, if you would, please, and we'll modify the next two cases afterwards, as Mr. Burgess is absent this evening. Next up is Promised Land Survey LLC, representing CMS Limited Partnership, and that's case number 24-109. Welcome back, Mr. Pelican.
Thanks for remembering my name. Good evening, my name's Tim Peliquin. I'm a licensed land surveyor. My company is Promised Land Survey. Talking about the property at map 51, lot 84, known as 64 Beaver Lake Ave. Our proposal is for a two-lot road frontage residential subdivision where the newly created lot will have its frontage on a road that is not a town-accepted road. Its frontage will be on a private road known as Jenny Dickey Way. So the points, the variance will not be contrary to the public interest because a private gravel road currently exists, which is already used as primary access by 12 other dwellings on Jenny Dickey Way. The spirit of the ordinance is observed because the proposed subdivision aligns with the allowed use within the MDR zoning district. The existing parcel has enough, substantial justice is done because the existing parcel has enough area and frontage to support the two-lot subdivision. The values of the surrounding property are not diminished because newly constructed dwellings, along with their associated landscape and other improvements, invariably add both aesthetic and economic value to a neighborhood. And literal enforcement of the provisions of the ordinance would result in an unnecessary hardship. The subject lot, with its current layout, enjoys approximately 150 feet of frontage on Jenny Dickey Way. So in the intrinsic nature of the lot lends itself to this use. And the proposed use is a reasonable one because there is ample land area for this lot to be subdivided, and there are other dwellings that use Jenny Dickey Way as their sole access. So in a nutshell, we're asking for a two-lot subdivision. One lot, the whole variance is based on the fact that we're having frontage on a private road known as Jenny Dickey Way. These plans have gone to the Technical Review Committee, so we've gone through a round with them. We're awaiting our time with this board and trying to simultaneous work through the zoning board, potentially the planning board. However, you guys got log jammed or bottlenecked big time, so we were kicked. And then some other things happened in between there, including me going to Africa for a month. So I am here back. We continued it to this meeting based on the fact that it was the most convenient time. There were many abutters at a meeting that were right here in March, and I'm sure they're going to want to speak. And at the meeting in March that did not get heard when we were dismissed at 9:30 p.m. To a case prior, we met in the lobby, and it was advantageous because I got to hear from some of the abutter concerns, and I believe we may have some solutions as we hear their comments. But I'll pause on that, and but I guess I want to say one more thing that I recall in early 2000, 2001, somewhere around that time frame, the other end of Jenny Dickey Lane, where Beaver Lake Association had a beach. We did a very, very similar subdivision back then that subdivided off that beach. There's a house there now, and it had frontage on Jenny Dickey Way. So there is a case precedent. I know everything's new and different, but I will tell you that. Also, I want to say that these two lots are amply sized, both over an acre of land, where 1 acre is required, and will tap into the sewer that is available to them as part of this subdivision. So with that, I'll pause, try to answer questions this board would have, or perhaps members of the public as deemed appropriate. Thank you.
The amount of frontage that actually gets into that intersection at Beaver Lake Road and Jenny Dickey Way, did you have some kind of calculation for how much of that frontage it is? I'm just curious.
That's a good question. The answer is, there's not a standard. So I guess I cannot give you a very specific answer. There's an old Charlie Pearson plan that defined this lot back in the day, and those are the basis of our measurements and how we articulated the beginning of Jenny Dickey Lane. However, I will tell you there's a minimum of 125 feet of frontage.
Required.
No matter what way you look at this along Jenny Dickey Lane.
Okay. Yeah,
Or way.
it's just one of those things where, you take that, you have that lot 85 there, and if that wasn't there, you probably wouldn't be here either, right?
True.
Any questions from anybody on the board? Mr. Dietzel?
Not at this time, Mr. Chair.
Okay, and Mr. Donlin, back to you.
Not just yet, Mr. Chair.
Okay, Mr. Obimba,
No questions?
you have no questions either?
No.
Mr. Tripp, did I inquire with you?
No, you didn't.
Well, I'm doing it now.
Since the question I have is, since the property is on Jenny Dickey Way, and that's a private road, I take it.
Yes.
So is there some sort of
Well, the
agreement?
property's also on Beaver Lake Ave, so
Say again?
it has double frontage. It does have frontage on Beaver Lake Avenue.
Doesn't look like that much frontage, though.
Yes. Let's see, 200, 250, 260,
Oh, I was,
270.
yeah, okay, thank you. The one that, since the variance request is for, to have a property on a non-public road, I was asking about the piece of the subdivision that would be on Jenny Dickey Way. Is there some sort of agreement with the Jenny Dickey people that, who owns the way? Let's put it that way.
I don't know. That's going to be my answer. It's an association that,
It's an
I
association.
don't know who plows it. That's a good question. I don't know that answer.
Yeah.
It did
Who
not
who
come up
plows
at
and
the
maintains
TRC.
it? That's, you know, it'd be silly to subdivide something that you have no access to.
Sure, and I should have known who plows and maintains that road. It's a good question.
No, because you
don't know the
said you
answer.
had to talk with people about, there's some sort of agreement that people can walk across the property.
Walk across is a strong, like, there is 15 or 16 people, and so I'll do a preemptive strike here, that have rights to bathe in the lake across this property. And go ahead and figure out what that means.
All
But-
winter long, all year round?
But that's okay. If maybe, given that question, do you mind going to sheet 3, or the sheet that I sent, Mr. Preventer? If that's okay, because I can show it on the screen, and that, probably sheet 3 is the best one to look at. I just want to say that there's, that, oh, you know what? Sorry, I got a pointer. I have a pointer, be easier. So, there's an access road that runs through here. There's 3 properties, 1, 2, 3. These properties have a right-of-way or access easement across this property, and it has to be across this gravel drive. It's the only practical access they have. It's not defined in any deeds. I'm sorry, it's not defined as any specificity as to a location, but here as part of this plan, we're defining it as a 20-foot access easement. We note on note number 7 as to what its use is for, and it's to access these properties. Now, additional to this plan, we've created in this general location a 10-foot wide access easement, and that's not for vehicular, it's for pedestrian access easement over to this property where I have a hatched area. That area is still to be determined, the specifics of that area, but there's a beach in this area, and this was known as the old Como's Beach. And that's where there had 15 or 16 people, 14, 15, 16, pick a number. It's kind of hard because you got to do the whole neighborhood to figure out who has that in their deed. But this is generally in this Como's Beach area where this existing beach house to be raised, it's either raised or reconstructed, would used to serve this beach area. Now that beach is now defunct. It's not being used as it was back in the bustling days, but so it's just not the state that it was back in the Como Beach era. That's all I'm saying. And so what we've done to protect the rights that are there is we're proposing, and it's not so much germane to the zoning board of adjustment. I think it would be more of a planning board issue, but you guys can weigh in on it as you see fit. But we're proposing a beach easement in this area. And then there's a note, if you don't mind moving up to it, Mr. Preventure, note number 6 and 7, so to speak to it. Note 6 says new beach easement for the benefit of any and all individuals with various deeded rights for the Beaver Lake use, and also its newly subdivided lots shown hereon. So in other words, I'm allowing those, it's only natural to allow the 2 people that, if these houses are constructed, to also have a similar right as the easements are across their property. And number 7 says new access easement for the benefit of those 3 lots that I mentioned earlier, and to provide also access to the beach easement. So we're That beach easement was never defined. I think it's been a gray area for quite a while. It was not a gray area when Como's Beach was active, but now that this land has been not used for a while, the beach house in disrepair, and it's become a little gray area, but in my estimation, legal might have to weigh in on that at some point. But what we're proposing is a beach easement area for anybody that has that right. Now, I do want to say there's the reason legal would need to weigh into this, and again, this might be outside the purview of the zoning board, but is how do you police that? How do you say, do you have a badge, how do you know who's, and as homeowners change and other things, it is going to become confusing. So I think somehow there needs to be a mechanism in place to define that easement and who has a right to it, and how it is policed, figuratively and literally maybe. So that said, it's a little confusing, but it might be outside the purview of this board, but I certainly think at the planning board level, that is going to need to be ironed out. But if this board deems fit that needs to be figured out at this meeting or subsequent meeting, we'll attempt to do that. Thank you.
I think your explanation on it, and I hear the grumblings, a dispute of whether it's being used or not is immaterial, but it's what you're providing at this time for the board to consider. And reduced rebuttal, though all the abutters have an opportunity to speak, but it clarifies any issues that could arise throughout the testimony. So, anybody have any questions for Mr. Peliquin on this?
No,
I just have one quick one, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Dietzel?
On this map, the color one that comes from the town,
Yes.
at the top, there's a little yellow square. What's that?
May I approach the bench?
Sure. On the vision map?
So what he pointed out to is exactly what shows on our plan, which is the existing beach house.
That's the existing beach house. Okay.
Yeah.
Because these pictures aren't exactly,
Of course.
okay.
This is.
Okay. All right, thank you. That's all I have.
Okay, very good clarity there. Anybody else? Mr. Obemba, any questions?
Did you say all the deeds for the abutting properties have the right to bed, and this particular deed doesn't mention anything about it?
It mentions this lot, it mentions various things, and again, it mentions the right to bathe in the lake across this lot.
And so 51084 lot
sorry.
deed, the deed we're trying to subdivide for that lot mentions the rights to bed in that.
No, not across the subject lot. The subject lot is older and written, so it doesn't have specificity to it as easements across it. But the abutting lands that were sold were gained that right. So it's up to attorneys to sort of figure that out down the road or whatever point, but at least I'm offering a plat that is intended to clear this.
Yeah, if you go down that North Shore area on Jenny Dickey, are those properties also given rights back onto this?
To this?
Yeah.
No, it's pretty much there's some of these abuttings, not every parcel that abuts this or is in the vicinity has that right. And that's where I get a little confused because but Charleston Place, if you go up that road, there's some of those properties have it, not all. Some of the abutting, obviously the ones with the access easement, and certainly there's people in the audience that know they have the right and in their deed, and it's important to them, and I understand why.
And is it deeded on each individual parcel? Who has rights, who doesn't? Is that the idea?
Yes.
Okay. And
But again, it's obscurely written, which is really...
Yeah, and to your point, you know, how do you police this and what are you going to do? But that's not this board's purview either, right? Okay. Any other questions? Don, Lynn, Tripp, Mrs. Moran?
I don't have any at this time.
And Mr. Corbett, you're all set, I know, and Mr. Dietzel, you're all set as well?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I'm all set for now.
Okay. Mr. Wentworth, do you have anything you'd like to add into this related to staff at all? Or, I know this was tabled from the last meeting, but,
I mean, I'll just read the request into the record.
very good.
The applicants are requesting a variance to the terms of Article 3, Section 165-9, and Article 6, Section 165-46C2 of the Town of Derry zoning ordinance to allow the property to be subdivided into 2 building lots, with one of the proposed lots to have frontage on a private road known as Jenny Dickey Way at 74 Beaver Lake Road, parcel ID 51084, zoned MDR.
And noting the discussion points about the property being subdivided and into 2 building lots, the property is in the MDR zone with 1 acre and 125 feet of frontage, and that's where the disparity in this matter comes, that the second lot does not have frontage on a town roads.
A Class 5 or better road, yep.
Class 5, that's correct. Okay. So, if no one else on the board has any questions, we've gotten our staff reading. Let's make a call to public and see what's going on out there. Who wish to, you got some phone numbers to post there, Mr. Preventure?
They're posted, Mr. Chair.
All right, very good. So anybody out there remotely that would like to be heard on this matter, they may call 646-558-8656. At the prompt, just enter the meeting ID number. And if you'd like to be heard, just press *9 and we will recognize you and bring you into the meeting. If you're having any technical problems using those phone numbers, do you have that 845? What's that, Jenny? 845 what? 5585. 845-5585 will get you to our clerk and she'll assist you to come into the meeting. That being said, we'll make a call to anybody who wishes to speak in favor of this application. This would be your opportunity to come forward and have your thoughts recognized. Seeing no one gesture in that regard, you wish to speak favorably to this application? Well, it's either you like it or you don't.
Well, I like it as long as the plans, I have documentation.
Come on up then, this is your cue. All right. You see anybody out there, Mr. Venture? Okay, so have a seat there, speak into the mic, and let's have your name and your property address, please.
My name is Jim Andrew. I'm at 47A Beaver Lake Ave.
Okay.
And my deed right here, you know, it's very clear, and I purchased that property in 1987. Clearly on my deed is written that I have rights to the water by the owner, George Samad, at the time. I grew up with young George. I knew Bobby Samad. I knew the family. I knew the father. And when these buildings were sold, and when I did buy this, here's my deed to the house. I also got title insurance. And in my title insurance, it's right on here that I have a deeded right to get to that property, no matter, they call it bathing rights, but it was swimming rights. And when the gentleman was speaking about the condition, I've been there for almost 40 years, and so have other owners, and it was us as the association that cleaned that beach, we till the beach, everything around it, he's right, is dead. Mr. Samad did nothing to that property for over, Alan Samad did nothing to that property for over 35 years, once the beach closed up. We had access to the front that he gave us to go around to the beach that this gentleman showed you, and we clean it, we rake it. Of course, around it, outside of the fence, looks like something from Mars. But where the beach is, it's used by my family, Richie's family, everyone uses that beach very often. Okay, so it's not, and I have a deed on, and we all have a deed on our beach. Now, listen to this gentleman. I don't have a problem with them developing that. None of us do. As long as we have, you know, it's a legal thing, it's a deed. You just can't take a deed away from someone. And the land codes, you are all aware of land codes. The land codes that the town of Derry goes by is 1010 is you'd be taxed on a single-family house. 1012, your property, like myself, is taxed on water access. It's different tax rate. We have 50 by 50 postage stamps, and we get tax rates. My land is valued at $175,000. Then you have 1013, waterfront property. That's taxed at a higher rate, like my friends on the water now. So every tax rate, from a 1010 to 1012 to for 40 years, I've been paying taxes on water access per my deed. The town of Derry got my taxes. So I hope that, you know, they should take that into consideration. And all the people in Charlestown Road too have been paying that tax rate for water access, not a single-family house. That's where I'm going with this, and I think his plan is a nice plan. We'd love to see it cleaned up. I would love to see, you know, the gentleman who bought the land, put up 2 nicest house, if they could have deeded rights to the water too and have it cleaned up, we don't have a problem with that. We just want to make sure that the final plans have included my deed, that I have myself and 8 on Charlestown Road, my whole 4 on my road, that we have it in a deed when we bought that from the property owner, that it's still in the deed. It's a deed. And that's where I'm going with the story.
So you like the plan, is okay, as long as you can keep picking it back?
Absolutely. I don't have none of us have a problem with that at all whatsoever. As long as we have rights that still continue to get the rights to get to the water. That's it.
Okay, any questions for, yes, Mr. Tripp?
Did you say you pay taxes on that access?
How, the tax rate in the town of Derry, land uses, are you familiar with the land uses that the town
Yes.
has? Land use is a little different. So, you know, if someone has a piece of property and they don't have water access, their code is 1010. It's like, you know, a regular single-family home. Then you have 1013 is waterfront property. It's another tax code. And 1012 is a tax code for water access. If you were on the beach, people that have access to all these little nooks and crannies that are on, what do you call those? That Derry has them all over Beaver Lake. What do you call it? Right-of-ways? Yeah. People live around the right-of-ways pay for that, too. They use the right-of-ways, but they pay for they're taxed at water access. And it's, you know.
So you're one of the people with the 1012s
1012, it's right.
that has water access, and you're paying taxes.
I'm paying my taxes for 40 years on it, and it's always a higher rate. If I talk to someone up the street and they don't have water access, their tax rate for a much piece of land was lower than mine. If a farm...
That's interesting.
A farmhouse doesn't pay the same amount of money as waterfront property. It's taxed rate differently. That's how it works. Anyway, that's what I was told when I paid my taxes anyway. But the land,
Happily,
this
I'm
plan
sure.
looks great, and we don't have a problem with that. And we work hard, we maintain that beach, and I think the gentleman right there, Bob, I think, Bob, you Bob?
No, speak into the microphone.
Okay, I'm not sure if this gentleman, Bob, is the one who, but it was recently sold, a parcel was sold, and on April 4th, I believe it was. So that has to be, I'm not sure what the consideration is from the purchase, whatnot, but I have the documents on that sale too, right here. But, you know, anyway. Some other people want to speak, but that's where I stand. I have a deed, if you guys would like to look at it, and my title insurance has it written in it. I was smart enough to do that back when, because I knew George Samad Senior, so I covered my bases, I'll be that way, so.
Okay. Any other questions? All right, thank you very much.
Thank you for your time.
Anybody out there that wishes to speak at this time, Mr. Provencher, remotely?
Seeing none rise,
All right,
Mr. Chair.
anybody else wish to speak affirmatively for this application? Have a seat.
Hi, Seth Enright, 78 Beaver Lake Avenue.
Sorry again?
Seth Enright, 78 Beaver Lake Avenue.
Yep.
I am not going to touch on to what Jimmy just talked about. I think he covered that very well. What I want to ask about is I'm at 78 Beaver Lake Ave, right there in the corner. I've been there for about 25 years. I've been maintaining that road with my neighbors for 25 years. I do what I can to help, but there are several people on the road that have done a lot to maintain the road, especially winters plowing. When the town decided they weren't going to plow our road anymore, before that, we were already plowing because the plows got to us way late. We had the elderly on the road, et cetera, et cetera. My question is, if we're putting a driveway on that, should that not be posed to everybody on Jenny Dickey, all the people maintaining that road for the past umpteens, 100 years? I know, I've been there for 25 years. I know there's other neighbors. There's a culvert, I believe they call it, filled with riprap that has to be maintained regularly, has to be dug out, the sand is removed. That's on us. So I don't know why the other it's just the abutters right around the property. It should, I feel it should be the whole street that is advised. So at least right now, across from me, in the winter, that area is used for a lot of basically snow pileup. You know, I know that's going to change, whatever, but I'd like the people plowing the street and maintaining the properties to be involved in the decision. That's all I wanted to bring up.
Can't answer that for you right now, but I'll tell you what, if that's your only question, we'll give Mr. Peliquin an opportunity to rebut and answer that for you.
Okay.
Okay?
Great, thank you.
All right, anybody else wish to speak positively here? Nothing? Okay. Anybody wish to speak in opposition to this application? This would be your opportunity to come forward. All right, seeing nobody there, and anybody remotely, Mr. Preventure?
Seeing no one rise, Mr. Chair.
Very good. Mr. Peliquin?
Mr. Chair, we do have someone who has just raised their hand online.
All right, let's bring him in.
Looks like somebody by the name of Laura Brooks. We can allow them to speak and identify themselves.
Good evening, Mrs. Brooks. Good evening, Mrs. Brooks. How do we unmute her?
It appears she does have the ability to speak. We're just not hearing her at this time.
Mrs. Brooks? Do we have a Mrs. Brooks that's in on the butters list there? No? Okay. All right. We don't see Mrs. Brooks as an abutter, and we can't hear her. Any help there, Mr. Preventure?
Not at this time. We can come back perhaps while some of the previous questions are being answered. I can confirm that we don't have a technical issue.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, let's have Mr. Peliquin come back up. He can answer a couple of questions, and then if she comes in that meantime, we'll listen to what she has to say.
Sure.
Mr. Peliquin?
Thank you. So the abutter concerns were well understood. And regarding the first gentleman that spoke, it is our full intention to respect their rights, just being clear on that. And further, if this board deemed fit to offer any approval of this, we'd be fine with subject to anybody that has access or deeded beach rights, that those would be honored and fulfilled at the planning board level, potentially. Because the way I'd see it is maybe a neighborhood meeting with the owner, or myself, let's map it out, let's mark it out, let's be clear on everything, and even figure out how it can be policed, you know, because I would imagine that's a concern for everybody involved, right? And just kind of iron those out before the planning board level, I would suggest. So any condition we're amicable towards or to. And then regarding the comment of Jenny Dickey Way and its maintenance, there's no doubt that this new lot should be a contributor to any association or contribute to the maintenance of that, a proportion to the maintenance of that road. And if the board saw fit to make that a condition of approval, I would say as long as it is maintained as a private way. In other words, sometimes private ways in the town of Derry eventually become public ways. So I don't want that to be like a forever type of thing, or I'd suggest it not to be. So those two things we're perfectly willing to, with those conditions, if the board saw fit.
Yeah. Okay. Just, anybody here know how Jenny Dickey Hill Road is currently maintained? Is it plowed? Mr. You all have an arrangement?
Come up, come up.
I'm sorry, Mr. Pelican.
There's no association, there's nothing like that. It's just neighbors that chip in and help each other out.
Okay, so you just randomly, no rules, you just know if somebody's in need or something needs to be done, you do it.
Correct.
Okay, that's very good.
Yeah, there's,
Your name and address?
Mike Calvetti. I live on Jenny Dickey Hill Road. I am the abutter to, I'm not sure what the lot number is, but I'm the abutter to the very first one there. And the thing is like with the families, we're there, I've been there for over 40 years, since 1982. So the people that are there, there's people there all summer long, and I don't think it was reached out to the people that are not abutting there. We did get a letter, so we know about this. I got to imagine, like Jim said, there could be a lot of people that you don't know about that has access. And that little lot there, it looks larger up here than it really is. I'm not sure of the footage, but there's families down there. I'm going to say there's sometimes 10 to 20 people down on that land. I have no problem. They're all good people that have been there. I've had no issues. But that little lot, it's small. It's wicked small. They're not going to have, they're going to be upset that if they're going to be boxed into that one little area.
All right, very good, thanks. I just wanted to clear that up. I think in Mr. Pelican's initial presentation at the beginning, he spoke about the uncertainty of maintenance, and I forgot to get that clarity. So.
And as far as the road becoming private, this one has actually gone the other way. This was a town-maintained road. We have sewer, which is a town ordinance or whatever. But now the town has told us we're not plowing your road anymore. So it was put onto, before, like I mentioned earlier, I didn't elaborate on it. Prior to, I forget, maybe 15 years ago, there was a meeting and we were told there's going to be no more maintenance to the road. It's now all on the homeowners. Prior to that, the maintenance was minimal. So basically, we were plowing the road ourselves anyway, because if we didn't, we weren't getting out.
Okay.
Yeah, I was actually told that someone on that road complained about it being a town road, so they changed it back to a private way. And the only street light on there is my light that I pay for monthly to have on. Because when we first got there and started a family, that road is dark. It is really dark. So that only street light there is owned by me.
Very good. Okay, thank you, gentlemen.
And I did want to mention, I think the plan looks good, to be honest with you. I'm concerned that everyone's not being alerted of what's going on, that's all.
Okay. Anything else?
Thank you.
Okay. All right, and Mr. Pelican, come on back up, and then we have, I did see the prompt for Ms. Brooks on there, Mr. Preventer.
Mr. Chair, our system settings seem to be nominal and in order. We may have a Zoom issue, and if folks would still like to speak, I would recommend we route them to the phone, the support phone,
Okay.
And we can mic that phone up.
All right, Mrs. Brooks, if you're out there, would you please call 845-5585, and the clerk will aid you to get patched in, and we'll hear your concerns. Sorry? Oh, I'm sorry, it's a 603. I thought you told me I did very good, thank you. Mr. Pelican, thank you.
Can I ask Mr. Pelican a question?
You gotta do the area codes now, so.
sorry.
Mr. Pelican, these folks have access to the bathing rights or swimming rights or whatever you call them, and that's written into the deed. Who is the grantor of that deed?
It would have been the Samards.
Who are they? Was
probably
it
the-
all one big property? Like,
No,
and then
well,
the little
it was. It had, I don't know the full history. There was
Okay,
a campground associated with this. There was various things.
I guess my question is it, according to the deed, they have the right to access. I want to know who gave them the right.
Yeah, the original owner of that parcel of the
Who
beach.
had some sort of that right from some prior deed or
Well,
land.
he granted those rights. So
But where did he
an
get
owner
'em?
in the 50s, maybe 60s.
Okay, I'm not looking to enforce a deed. That's somebody else's job. I'm just wondering, like, where they got that right.
Yep.
I mean, you could put anything in a deed,
Sure you can.
but it has some sort of legal ownership origin
Yes.
from somewhere, okay. All right, that's all. Thanks.
Anything else, Mr.
Good
Pelican?
question. Nope.
Okay. Don't want to borrow any more trouble, right? Any follow-up questions, Mr. Tripp, Ms. Moran, Mr. Donlin? Folks all set?
Yes, sir.
Set.
Very good. Okay. Guess the board has satisfied the public input portion of this request, this application. So therefore, we could take a motion to go into deliberation. If there's no other questions. Buddy?
I'll make that motion.
Very good, thank you, Mrs. Moran.
I'll second it.
Mr. Tripp seconds, thank you. Train's pulling out of the station. And all in favor of deliberation, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none. All right. So, anybody have any feelings here? Mr. Tripp, you want to lead off?
Well, the variance they're requesting is to allow them to have a lot without frontage on a public road. And not only is it not a public road, I don't think anybody really understands, who owns that road, and if there's even a right-of-way. Is it? We're basically saying it's all right to create a landlocked piece of property if we were to approve this. I have some issues with this.
Okay. Mr. Dietzel, care to cross there?
These roads have been in existence for many, many years, and the only change that I really see from status quo is we're creating two lots where there used to be one. And the frontage is going to be on a private way when it used to have Beaver Lake Ave frontage, which is public. The difference to me really seems immaterial. Yes, we are creating what I guess is technically a landlocked parcel, but I don't see when applying the 5 criteria why that, I wouldn't say it doesn't matter, but why that would carry the discussion. Things are remaining, in my view, the same as they've always been for a long, long time, except it's going to be 2 lots. And that, to me, the 2 lots is not a problem for me. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
All right, Mr. Donlin.
Yeah, I think the reasonableness of the size of the lots, given the area, is noted. And it doesn't, you know, so the relief on the private road, I get that it's a private road. To me, it's, you know, I'm not really seeing how, there would be a pretty extreme circumstance to me for that access to go away, because it would affect not just this lot, but whatever they said, 12 lots otherwise as well. So that would be pretty extreme, so I'm not really seeing a situation where that would happen. I did have a question about what Mr. Peliquin, I believe he referenced as sheet 3 when he was talking about the one. That's not in my packet. Is that part of the actual packet, so it will be like considered as presented with when they had the deeded right away and then like the 10-foot viatic walkway?
Say all that again?
It's not in our packet. The picture he showed up there, page 3, we don't have.
Okay.
So it wouldn't be as presented, quote unquote, right? So I'm being that I don't think it's in the purview of the board to debate the validity of anybody's deed. I mean, to Mr. Peliquin's point, that's for the lawyers to decide, is what I believe he said. I do think that it is extremely neighborly of the property owner to be putting pen to paper to put the deeded right away in and to make that viatic walkway to their water access, for lack of a better term. But that being said, I'm not really sure how we solidify that in our conditions if that page wasn't part of the packet.
Okay. Mr. Tripp or Mrs. Moran, either one?
You can go first.
I already spoke once.
Okay, all right, I'm sorry. Mrs. Moran?
I feel that it's not an overreach, and anything that is said, even with or without paperwork, the whole presentation is part of, like, the testimony, and it has, I don't know what word I'm looking for, but what Promised Land states is what has to be done.
Yep. You know, so understanding Mr. Tripp's point, and when someone comes in for relief, and Mr. Dietzel cited this as well, and Mr. Donlin, I'm sorry, I'm starting to go the wayward son with the names, but, you know, if you looked at map 52, lot 3-1, all the way down Jenny Dickey Road, and someone was looking for relief there, which is, I assume there's a structure on that parcel and it's maintained. It's up to them and to understand how to get in and out of that property, how it's maintained, and there's buyer due diligence to that. Likewise, to the theory that this is landlocked, I don't quite see this as being landlocked. There is a segment there that Mr. Peliquin and I discussed that is on that Beaver Lake Ave road, which is maintained. And likewise, anybody that purchases this, if they're really concerned about whether they're going to have that service or not, they'll do their due diligence and make sure that there's access in and out of that property. So it's not totally blocked off. So I don't agree quite with the landlocked theory here. This isn't an island out in the sea kind of thing. I think that understanding the size of the parcel and how it compares to the other parcels in the surrounding area, I think that it seems to be a reasonable request. If the hardship is only that it's on a non-town maintained road, but it's been in existence since Chief Shenito was paddling across the lake, I'm not going to dispute it. And so that's my feeling on the matter. I don't quite seeing it as that landlocked issue. So, and I don't see any of any of the issues with the 5 criteria on this either. Those are my thoughts and conclude the board's thoughts, a synopsis on this application. So let's structure the motion. As usual, it's the obtaining of town, state and town permits and inspections and would be subject to planning board approval. Also, a state shoreline permit would be part of the requirements under the permitting, and it's subject to recording a waiver of municipal liability and responsibility for the proposed lot on 54084-001. Are there any other conditions this board would like to structure or impose on this before we come out of deliberation? Seeing no gestures there, we can take a motion to come out of deliberation.
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Tripp makes the motion. Mr. Dietzel, you want to help out?
Second motion.
Thank you very much. Seconded by Mr. Dietzel. All in favor of coming out of deliberation?
Aye.
Say aye. Any opposed? Hearing none. Mrs. Moran, you have a motion to read.
Before that is read, may I just interject?
You may.
Thank you. I want to offer 5 copies of the plan that were last revised on 5/13/2024 by my company. So if you're referencing the plan and you say as last revised, and I'll submit these plans, and that revision is stated added new access and beach easements. So I just want to be clear on that, and that might help put a stamp to that, if you're willing to accept these.
Motion for the board, be the board's purview to accept the amended plan as the presenter has indicated. I would need a motion for that, please.
Chair, I'll make that motion.
Thank you, Mrs. Moore. A second on that, please.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Donlin, as a second. All in favor of that amendment, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? So we have no opposition there. Now we have to, I'll take that. You're a trickster is what you are. What do they say? I just, after 7 o'clock, I don't have to do any more thinking. Can you weave that into there?
The plans as last revised 5/13/2024.
It's a packet.
5, right? So
You have
The
to give them
lower
a
right
packet.
corner of the plan.
Can't steal one of each
One more
person's
down.
paper.
all right. Can you fit that in there?
No, I think it's on the record.
Yeah, it's on the record and now
It's in our packet
And then Rev
now.
2 puts the added access and beach easement.
All right, very good. I'll accept that. Okay, very good. Mrs. Moran, you have a motion to read.
I do, thank you. I make a motion on case number 24-109, Promise Land Survey LLC, owner CMS Limited Partnership, to grant a variance to the terms of Article 3, Section 165-9, and Article 6, Section 165-46.c.2 of the Town of Derry zoning ordinance to allow the property to be subdivided into 2 building lots, with one of the proposed lots to have frontage on a private road known as Jenny Dickey Way at 74 Beaver Lake Road, parcel ID 51084, zoned MDR, as presented with the following conditions. We have 4. Subject to obtaining all state and town permits and inspections. 2, subject to planning board subdivision approval. 3, subject to obtaining state shoreland permits. 4, subject to recording waiver of municipal liability and responsibility for proposed lot 54084-001. And that concludes the reading of the motion. I need a second.
Second.
All in favor of, well, I'm sorry, that motion's on the floor, so let me read in finding of fact. We have case number 24-109, In this case, the property is in the medium-density residential zone, requires 125 feet of frontage, and relief is being sought for frontage on a private road. The board also includes all facts found in the meeting minutes for this application, incorporates all meeting minutes into its finding of facts and decisions. Anybody have any amendments to the finding of fact? Seeing no gestures there, all right, all in favor of moving the motion for approval of this for a vote, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none. Mrs. Moran,
Chair, I vote yes.
Mr. Tripp,
I vote yes.
Mr. Donlin,
I vote yes.
Mr. Dietzel,
Yes.
and the chair will make it unanimous by 5-0. Anybody aggrieved by this decision has 30 days to ask this board for review. After that, recourse is to Superior Court. So congratulations, Mr. Pelican, on that one. Do you have finding of facts on those others prepared at all, or no?
Doing it now, yeah.
I'm sorry?
I have that one, I'm doing the other ones. The board also includes all facts, and that don't start with it.
Oh, okay. Yeah, no, I agree with you. There is some redundancy from that, but the whole thing scares the bejesus out of me, and I can't be too safe with it. Right? Basis. Okay. Mr. Preventure, give us 3 or 4 minutes break, if you would, please.
Understood, Mr. Chair.
Thank you.
Go quiet.
right, very good, and we're back. Next up is Jennifer Schwinnard, and that is case number 24-118. Good evening. And how are you tonight?
I'm all right, how are you?
So we ask that you read your application as it's presented for the record, all right? And then we'll proceed from there.
Okay. The variance will not be contrary to the public interest because this is an existing home, only building up in the back part of the home. It will not be obstructing neighbors' view of lake. The spirit of the ordinance is observed because we will not be obtaining any other land, just building up. Original home was built according to the guidelines back in 1940 as a camp. Substantial justice is done because the existing floor plan does not fit the family needs. The values of the surrounding properties are not diminished. The value of Seven Coles Grove will only increase in value and be more aesthetically pleasing. Do you want me to keep going? Yes?
Yep.
Okay. Other surrounding properties have built up or completely rebuilt their homes. We would like to upgrade the value of the home, keeping the existing square feet of the first floor. We will not be further encroaching to the property line. Pitch will not be much higher due to the slope of the property.
Okay. Why don't you go ahead and explain it in your own words, what you're doing here?
So this home, I actually lived there with my parents, raised two of my daughters. My parents recently moved to Florida back in September. Barry and Carol Kilduff purchased the home, and they are leaving it to me, and they're I forget what it's called there. So I will be living in the home. However, the home, the way it is structured now, is not a good flow for my family at all. So we would like to build up in the back part of the homes. The top floor would be just a bedroom and a bathroom. And downstairs will be just 2 bedrooms, and we'll be opening up the front part of the home.
So in the image that you've presented, you're the lot at the fork in the road,
Yes,
and it almost looks like you have 3 different roof lines there, am I correct?
I believe it, 2 or 3, yes.
I see.
2, and then there's a drop-down smaller section, but it's pretty much going, so if you look at this.
Well, what I see is 3 different ridges, 3
Yes,
ridge
yes,
elevations,
yes,
correct?
Yes.
All right, and one is perpendicular to the other 2.
Mm-hmm.
All right, and so which one of those are you expanding on, or how many of them?
The far back.
Okay, just the far back you're
Yes.
going up. Do you have to raise any part of that, tear it down?
Tear off the roof and go up.
Okay, good enough, and that's gonna meet the code department, all right, good enough.
That will need all building permits.
And you're indicating there's no obstructions to the neighbor behind,
Correct.
and you're not increasing the footprint.
Correct.
Okay. Any questions from anybody else on the board? Mr. Corbett? Mr. Tripp?
Nope.
Mrs. Warren?
It says the rear property line, would that be the 2 Beaver Lake? Is that considered rear?
Yes, the blue home in the back, yes.
Thank you.
Okay. Mr. Bimba?
All set?
Okay, good enough. Follow-up from the alternates on this, Mr. Donlin, anything, or Mr. Dietzel?
No, thank you, Mr. Chair.
Good enough. Mr. Wentworth, you have any follow-up you'd like to give us?
Just that the applicant is seeking a variance to allow the construction of the second story with less than 15 feet to the property line. So the variance is required.
All right, very good. You folks have anything else you want to tell us?
Don't think so?
We're ready to pull teeth anytime now, so hang on.
It's past my bedtime.
All right, let's make a call to public. You have some phone numbers there for us, Mr. Provencher. So anybody in this room that wishes to speak favorably this application, this would be your opportunity to come forward.
I'd rather not come forward.
This is your opportunity to come forward, and we need to
Very in favor of it.
come forward.
You come up, they'll back down, they'll step away.
Folks, if you want to step away,
Go ahead.
folks, if you want to step,
Very in favor of it.
go to the mic, please.
I'm very in favor of it.
Your name is?
My name is Bill Hidayah. I live at 8 Coles Grove. You could take that picture around. I live right there.
Okay,
He said he doesn't want to get close.
I'm sorry, my voice, I just don't want to get anyone
all right,
to have
very
what I
good.
have. Thank
So
you.
you're in favor, that's
Oh,
it?
absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, she's a great neighbor.
Good enough.
Thank
It's
you,
good to
Bill.
have great neighbors. Okay. Anybody else? Do you want to step forward?
I will.
You come up.
You just went by my house. I'm at 12 Coles Grove, and she is my adopted, my name's Carol Kilda, and she's my adopted daughter, and her children are my adopted nieces and nephews, but she will be living there, and the whole idea my husband and I had is that we would, this house will be in her name and will be in her children's name if she has the ability to live there comfortably.
Okay.
Thank you.
Very good, thank you. All right, anybody else? We have the phone numbers posted.
Mr. Chair, if I could suggest that we just guide people to the clerk's phone, just to ensure we can get people calling in
Very good.
reliably.
So anybody who wishes to be heard remotely, please call into the clerk at 845-5585, and the clerk will help you in, or we can hear your point of view. That being said, anybody opposed to this application, this is your opportunity to come forward and be heard. Seeing no gestures or anybody rise there. Likewise, if you are in opposition, we'll give you a couple of seconds here to call in at 845-5585. The clerk will help guide you in so your concerns can be voiced. And for a moment of silence there, we see anybody there, Mr. Provencher or Mrs. Rio? I have no idea who's.
So we're seeing no one rise online, and certainly not hearing the
Good to go.
phone ring.
All right, we'll consider ourselves that we've met the standard for all abutters to be heard. You folks have any last comments? Mrs. Moran?
I apologize for when I butcher your name, but how do you say your last name?
Chenard.
Thank you.
That's okay.
Okay. All right, any last questions from anybody on the board? Seeing no gestures there? I'll take a motion to go into deliberation.
I'll make the motion.
Thank you, Mr. Obimba. Somebody want to give me a second?
I'll second it.
Very good. Thank you, Mrs. Moran. All in favor of deliberation, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none? All right, discussion? Anybody solely against this? Well, I'm not seeing anybody raise their hand or... And so that would mean that everybody's in support of this. It seems like a relatively decent application. It's an expansion upward towards the gods, and you see that in a lot of the other parcels in around the area. And no doubt that the property will become more to standard, including energy conservation. So let's structure the motion, subject to all town, state and town permits and inspections. Anybody else have any other conditions? You want a season's pass to go bathing?
You're welcome.
So, nobody has anything else to add, we can come out, motion to come out of deliberation.
So moved.
Mr. Tripp has that motion to exit deliberation, and a second from someone?
I'll second it.
Mrs. Moran seconds that. All in favor of coming out of deliberation, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Mrs. Moran, you got a motion to read.
I do, thank you. I make a motion on case number 24-118, Jennifer Schoenide, owner, thank you. Oh, I owner Carol Ann Barry Kilduff to grant a variance to the terms of Article 6, Section 165-46.c.4 of the Town of Derry zoning ordinance to allow the construction of a second-story addition less than 15 feet from the rear property line at 7 Coles Grove Road, parcel ID 51035, zoned MDR, as presented with the following conditions. We have one, subject to obtaining all state and town permits and inspections, and that concludes the reading of the motion. I need a second, please.
I'll second.
Mr. Obimba seconds that motion is on the floor. We got finding of fact. Mr. Corbett, you want to help us?
Yep, finding a fact for case 24-118. The applicants are requesting a variance of the terms of Article 6, Section 165-46.c.4 to allow the construction of a second-story addition less than 15 feet from the rear property line at 7 Coles Grove Road, zoned MDR. The applicant is requesting approval to add a second story over an existing portion of the dwelling. A variance is required as this proposal is considered an expansion of the current nonconformity. The home is connected to the municipal sewage system. The board also includes all facts found in the meeting minutes for this application and incorporates all meeting minutes into its finding of facts and decisions. This concludes the reading of the finding of fact.
Very good. Anybody have any amendments or alterations to the finding of fact? Seeing no gestures there, all in favor of moving the motion for a vote, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, Mr. Corbett?
Yes.
Ms. Moran?
Yes.
Mr. Tripp?
Yes.
Mr. Obimba?
Yes.
And the chair will make that a yes as well, 5-0. Very good. Folks, congratulations. Your application has been approved by 5-0. Anybody aggrieved by this decision has 30 days to ask this board for reconsideration. After that, recourse would be to Superior Court, but our suggestion is always you just wait 30 days if you think someone's going to protest this before you break ground, okay? Very good. Have a good evening.
Great,
Thank
thank
you.
you so much. Thank you. Oh, that's not mine.
All right. Gonna be that happy?
Room's cleared out.
All right. Well, how's that, mister?
Yeah.
Did
I
all right
like
for
it.
you, right?
I like it.
All right. Mr. Obimba, would you sit on this next case as well, please?
Yes, Mr. Chair.
All right, very good. Mr. Call the case here. Promised Land Survey LLC, representing Andrew M. and Alana M. Day, case number 24-119. You're alone tonight for the rest of the evening, Mr.?
Yes, it appears so.
Okay.
Want me to
good
break
enough.
right in? So, good evening. My name is Tim Peloquin. I'm a licensed land surveyor. My company is Promised Land Survey. Here representing Andy and Alana Day at their property at 32 Pond Road in Derry. We're asking relief from sections 165-18 and 165-20A. I'll go into the preamble or go right down the points, but I do want to say this is repetitive to an approval that this board granted approximately a little more than 2 years ago. Our proposal is to construct a replacement with some slight variations. Our proposal is to construct a replacement dwelling on a subject 3.3 acre lot, said new dwelling and associated septic system to be located within the setback restrictions of the local zoning ordinance. The variance will not be contrary to the public interest because the existing dwelling, I put in parentheses, yurt, meaning it's a, I don't know how to describe it. It's kind of a circle home. Needs to be reconstructed, and the replacement area, as depicted on the plan that we submitted, is in a better location with a much smaller environmental impact. That should be noted. The spirit of the ordinance is observed because the existing lot is greatly restricted, and this new dwelling location is ample and even a betterment to the existing dwelling, which is noted as the yurt. Substantial justice is done because the landowners would need to reconstruct their dwelling in a better location for access and utilization of their property while maintaining property line setbacks. The values of surrounding properties are not diminished because the proposed new single-family dwelling will incorporate new construction and will inherently add value to the surrounding properties and neighboring properties. And literal enforcement of the provisions of the ordinance would result in an unnecessary hardship because rebuilding the existing dwelling, yurt, which is located on the other side of a wetland and accessed via a footbridge, is impractical, and further, is also within the wetland setbacks. The proposed use is a reasonable one because, as stated, the location of the new dwelling is a better location environmentally speaking in terms of setback to the wetlands as they relate to the structure and setback. And lastly, on the section B, if the criteria is not established, this will be important to note. The New Hampshire Department of Environmental Services, NHDES, has issued an approval for construction per attached plan that we submitted as part of our plot plan. Of note, the NHDES is very strict in its protection of wetlands, so their approval of this design should provide the board and abutters with confidence that this minor adjustment of the building and septic location per previous ZBA variance secured, which was case number 22-116 of February 2nd, 2022, is environmentally sound and reasonable. So basically, this came before you a year and a quarter ago, right? 2.25 years ago, sorry. And that variance never got acted on. The homeowners continued to live on their property in the yurt, as it's called, on the other side of a footbridge. They park on one side, walk across, and that yurt is it's in need of repair and other things. Its septic system is that exists there for the yurt is on that same side, but it butts right up against the wetland. It's not environmentally friendly. And so our proposal that came before you a couple years ago plus was to put the dwelling on that side, which we did, and we did again. But what we did on there is we just showed an approximate septic system area. There was no test pitting done, there was no topography, there was no definitive design of a septic system. So when we were re-engaged to, once the owners finally went to an architect to design their residential two-bedroom home, which is modest in size. We worked the house location and the septic system in the same general area that was originally approved, and submitted for DES what was most practical. We put the septic system in the very best area that we could, basically, and everything was backed out from there. And what my point was is I honestly did not know if the DES would approve this because it's pretty well close to wetlands. But they did see this as a betterment for what exists on the other side, because the people's rights cannot be taken away that have the yurt on the other side that they're looking to abandon, and their septic system that's over there is more environmentally sensitive, let's just say. So this represents a betterment in all forms, and the owners would be able to reconstruct a sufficient home and a septic system on that side. So with all that said, that's the editorial. I'll pause and answer any questions the board will have, or perhaps members of the public as appropriate. Thank you.
So you did say you do have approval for the subservice
Yes.
system? Okay.
And the plot plan that I submitted as part of this, actually, the red stamps that you might see on the 11 by 17 on the lower left corner is verification of that.
Got it, okay. Yeah, and I'm sorry, I'm looking at your engineer stamp on the right, and I missed the one
Yeah.
in the red.
Sure,
And the-
sure.
and the- But the reason I ask is only because the staff report indicates that it may not have, just the wording indicates that it may not have been approved, and we're still waiting for approval. Not that that's written in stone, but that's where that inquiry comes from.
Sure.
Anybody else have any questions? Mr. Bimba, right?
Any reason why this was not acted on in the time frame that's allowed by law, the 2-year period, and what has changed since this was originally approved?
It's only a matter of feet, I would tell you, from the original approval. The house got tweaked a bit. It got smaller and larger a little bit in terms of the footprint, but the house isn't more the issue. The septic system kind of got jammed in an area between a very small wetland and a larger wetland. And where the test pit and the soils were satisfactory, the septic system had to go there. But it's still the same area that was before. It's just a matter of a few feet moving. We would have resecured the original approval that went before you, or attempted to, but it made sense to make sure that we could get this approved by DES prior to coming back.
Cold winter in the yurt?
I'm sorry?
Cold winter in the yurt?
Yes, I think it was for those folks.
Mr. Bimba, anything else?
If the current structure stays, what's the, that's maybe for code enforcement, how do we ensure that this is not just an extra residential property that could be rented out to somebody else? Because it's right now a residential unit.
Well, the yurt is not textually considered a structure, a dwelling by the town of Derry. So this would continue to be one building on the lot, one dwelling.
Yep. All set.
And we do note on the plan for DES purposes that the septic system on that side is to be removed and abandoned, and that the yurt may remain for storage only. So at least we're noting that, that's our full intention, because we knew that question would come. It's a good one.
All set.
Enough?
Yep.
Mr. Tripp?
I have no questions.
All right, Mrs. Moore? And alternates on Mr. Dietzel or Mr. Donlin?
No, thank you.
Okay, good enough. All right. I think you've answered all my questions as well. Mr. Wentworth, do you have anything else you'd like to add there, or are you all set?
I do not.
Okay, good enough. Well, let's make a call to public and see if there's any input there. Anybody who wishes to speak favorably to this application, this would be your opportunity to do so. Noting the phone numbers that are on the screen, if you're remote, please just call into 845-5585 and speak with the clerk, and we'll make sure to try and have your concerns conveyed to the public. All right? That being said, seeing no gestures from the crowd here in the auditorium, come forward. Anybody who wishes to oppose this application, this would be your opportunity to come forward and say so. And likewise, that call goes out to the remote world, and that's 845-5585 to call in. I'm not hearing that phone ring. Am I correct, Mrs. Rio? Okay, and nothing's out there, Mr. Provencher?
Correct, Mr. Chair.
Good enough. So we'll consider that we've met the statutes for public input. And hearing no public input, That'll take us to the next step in the process. And Mr. Peliquin, if there's nothing else for you to add, and no questions from the board, we will take a motion to go into deliberation.
So moved.
Mr. Tripp makes that motion. Mr. Obimba, you want to help out?
I'll second the motion.
Obimba seconds. All in favor of going into deliberation, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none. Let's have a discussion. Anybody see an objection to this? Does everybody see an improvement to this?
I do. It's the new septic system is approved, so that's a step closer to them achieving the goal. So it's way better than the original application back 2 years ago.
Yeah, I like the fact that they're not going to have to cross a bridge to go home anymore, and I think it does improve the area for any contamination that might happen from a septic system to public water or a water area. Ms. Moran, anything from you?
I feel, I had the same feelings. Anytime I see shoreland approval, it definitely eases my mind.
Okay, good enough. Mr. Corbett?
No, we got about 85% of the house within the wetlands. No one seems concerned. I see no issue.
Okay, good enough. And I think we're all set. Structure of the motion, obtaining all state and town permits and inspections. So if anybody, does anybody have anything else they'd like to put on for a motion, on the motion? And no gestures there. That being the case, take a motion, come out of deliberation.
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Tripp. Could I have a second, please? Mr. Corbett?
Second.
Okay, good enough. Mr. Corbett has a second. All in favor of coming out of deliberation, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing no opposition, we are out of deliberation, and Mrs. Moran, you have a motion to read.
I do, thank you. I make a motion on case number 24-119, Promise Land Survey LLC, owner Andrew M. Day and Alana M. Day, to grant a variance to the terms of Article 3, Sections 165-17, 18, and 20A of the Town of Derry zoning ordinance to allow the construction of a replacement dwelling and associated septic system with less than required wetland setbacks at 32 Pond Road, parcel ID 44015-007, zoned MDR, as presented with the following conditions. We have 1, subject to obtaining all state and town permits and inspections, and that concludes the reading of the motion. I need a second.
Very good.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Tripp. That motion's on the floor. Mr. Corbett, do you have the finding of fact?
Yep, finding of facts for case 24-119. The applicants are requesting a variance to the terms of Article 3, Sections 165-17, 18, and 20A to allow the construction of a replacement dwelling and septic system with less than the required wetland setbacks at 32 Pond Road, zoned MDR. The applicants are requesting approval to construct a new single-family dwelling on the property. The applicants are requesting relief from the general wetland setback provisions that require a 30-foot building setback for a wetland less than 1 acre and a 75-foot building setback for a wetland 1 acre or larger. Also seeking relief from the provision that the septic system be located a minimum of 75 feet from the wetland and 125 feet from the conservation corridor, also known as the 100-year flood zone. A similar request was granted by the board in February of 2022, but has since expired. As the property is located in close proximity to the 100-year flood zone, a flood elevation certificate will be required to ensure the dwelling is elevated above the flood zone. And if approved, it will also be determined if the property falls within the limits of the comprehensive shoreland protection regulations. The board also includes all facts found in the meeting minutes for this application and incorporates all meeting minutes into its facts, findings, and decisions. That concludes the finding of fact.
Very good. Any amendments or alterations from any of the board? Seeing no gestures there. All right, the motion's on the floor, and all in favor of moving that motion for a vote, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none. Mrs., let's see here, we've got Mrs. Moran,
Chair, I vote yes.
Mr. Corbett,
Yes.
Mr. Tripp,
Yes.
and Mr. Obimba.
Yes.
All right, and the chair will make that one unanimous as well. So congratulations, Mr. Peliquin. Your application has been approved by a vote of 5-0. Anybody who is aggrieved by this has 30 days to ask this board for reconsideration. After that, recourse to Superior Court. And thank you very much. Nice streak tonight you had.
28 more minutes.
All right, good enough. I'm sorry again.
So we have 28 more minutes.
No, I've had enough for this day. All right, we have no other business or correspondence to the board. Can I get a motion on the minutes for April 18th, 2024? You have any amendments at all, Mrs. Rio?
Received nothing.
Okay, good enough. So can we have a motion to accept those minutes as written?
So moved.
Mr. Tripp accepts those minutes as written, makes the motion. Could I have a second, please?
I'll second it.
Ms. Moran makes second. All in favor of approval of those April 18th minutes, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. The May 2nd minutes, did you? I'm sorry again? Okay, good enough. Could I have a motion to table those, please? The minutes from May 2nd.
Chair, I'll make that motion.
Thank you very much.
I'll second it.
Mrs. Moran has the motion. Mr. Tripp seconds. All in favor of tabling those minutes, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, those minutes are tabled. We have no other business. We have cases lined up for our next meeting, correct, Mrs. Rio?
19 Elm Street coming back, and we tabled 29 Pond,
Yep.
and we have one new case, and the cutoff isn't until 5/22.
Okay, very good. Well, I'll communicate back with code enforcement, give some direction to the applicant on Mr. Gebasis. Other than that, I have no other business. Does anybody else have any other business? Therefore, we can take a motion to adjourn.
I'll make the motion.
Who has that?
Everybody.
I'll make the motion to
Mr.
adjourn.
Obimba has the motion. Second, please.
Second.
Second by Mr. Tripp. All in favor of adjournment, say aye.
Aye.
Any
Aye.
opposed? We're adjourned. Have a good night, everybody.
Woo.